I want to welcome everybody to this remarkable program and thank you all for coming. I'm Norm Ornstein. I'm a political scientist, an emeritus scholar at a think tank in Washington, but I'm here today with another hat on, which is being a vice president of a foundation, the Matthew Harris Ornstein Memorial Foundation, set up in memory of my son. And we're going to be seeing this quite remarkable documentary about a remarkable program and a remarkable judge in Miami-Dade County, Florida, followed by a discussion with an even more remarkable panel. The panel includes that judge, Steve Leifman, who's an associate administrative judge of the 11th Judicial Circuit in Florida, but who pioneered a program now known widely as the Miami model that's transformed the way the criminal justice system deals with people with serious mental illness and found ways to bring together strange bedfellows, normally adversaries, but to save lives and save money at the same time. We have one of the most distinguished psychiatrists in the country, Stephanie Lamell, who is the director of the public psychiatry education at New York State Psychiatric Institute, a part of Columbia University. She was the medical or clinical director for a while. She is a professor, associate clinical professor of psychiatry at Columbia, has been involved with a whole range of issues and interests in criminal justice and mental health, among other things. And by the narrator of the film, Rob Reiner, known to many of you as an actor, but also a director who has made films that are among the most iconic of a generation or more, from Stand By Me to When Harry Met Sally to A Few Good Men. This is Spinal Tap, Princess Bride. I view Rob as the Frank Capra, William Wellman of a new generation. And has other interests. And another film, which many of you may not be as familiar with, Being Charlie, which is a fictionalized story made with his son, Nick, about his son's own struggles as a young man with addiction and homelessness. So we're soon going to see the film. I want to thank the sponsors that we have here, the Addiction Policy Forum and Columbia University, and also our own Matthew Harris Ornstein Memorial Foundation. I'm here with my wife, Judy, just a minute or two. Our son, Matthew, died at 36 on January 3rd, 2015. A brilliant young man, national champion high school debater, excelled at Princeton University, was doing well in Hollywood when he had a psychotic break at age 24, and went through a 10-year struggle with serious mental illness before dying accidentally. And we have tried to turn grief to purpose. And along the way, we encountered Judge Leifman and went down and immersed ourselves in his program and saw that there were ways to make the lives of those who suffer from significant brain diseases and often with addiction, with self-medication, and with the struggles that their families have to endure in a broken mental health system, a broken criminal justice system, to not have to go through what my son went through or what we went through. So this is Judy Harris, my wife, and Matthew's mother.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. So this is a picture of our son at his graduation at Princeton, where he was elected by his classmates to be a speaker at class day and graduation weekend. We couldn't possibly have been more proud. He was magnificent. He was his usual hilarious self. But it wasn't long after that that he started to show signs that something was not right with him. After many encounters with an extraordinarily broken system for the treatment of the seriously mental ill in the state of Maryland, and that's the state that Matthew was in when we brought him back from California, and so that's the state I'm most familiar with. But after that, I, as Matthew's mother, used to literally get down on my hands and knees at night and pray that my perfect son, who had never done anything wrong in his life, would commit a serious crime in the hope that he would get sent to a prison where maybe he would finally get some treatment. He had something we call anosognosia, lack of insight into his illness, and he believed that it would get in the way of what God had planned for him if he ever took medicine or sought treatment. I didn't know when I was praying at night that I had to add to my prayers that he should commit his crime in Miami-Dade County, Florida, because that was the only place in the world where he would get the treatment and the care that he needed. It took me a number of years to learn that, but we're very proud of our relationship, our deep friendship that's involved with Steve, and we're so thrilled to be able to play a small part in the dissemination of this documentary and the production of it. I want to make sure we give a shout out to our documentarians, Gabe London and Charlie Sadoff, of course, who I don't know if they're on. I hope they are on. We have a continuing relationship. We've got our next project already underway. Gabe was a close friend of Matthew's. Everything we've done through our foundation has been with friends of Matthew's. So thank you so much. And guys, thank you for a brilliant documentary. We look forward to the next one.
And now on to the film.
When I became a judge, I had no idea I was becoming the gatekeeper to the largest psychiatric facility in the state of Florida, the Miami-Dade County Jail. This was not just a local problem, but it is a national one as well.
LA County estimates 27% of its homeless population suffers from serious mental illness.
Neighbors say the man shot by police has struggled with mental illness.
They looked at these folks as criminals, and that the best way to handle it was to get them off the street and just lock them up.
Our jails have become the largest public psychiatric institutions in the country.
They don't have the mental health staff and resources to provide treatment.
We were spending $80 million a year to warehouse people in the conditions that you wouldn't let your dog stay in.
Water's not working. He's drinking sewer water. He's drinking toilet water out of the toilet.
It's foolhardy what we do now, it's dangerous what we do now, and it's cruel because we're not affording people the opportunity for recovery.
We know how to fix it. It's a question of political will, and it's a question of leadership.
This is not a criminal justice problem. This is a community problem that requires a community solution. We want people to be part of their own change. We want to be able to give them the tools that they need so that they get the insight, but they also learn that there is a better way to live, there is a better way to deal with their illness, and you need to stay away from committing offenses.
In January 2000, Miami-Dade County Court Judge Stephen Leifman made one of the biggest mistakes of his career. He promised the parents of a man who had once been a practicing Harvard-educated psychiatrist, but was now homeless and appearing in his court for a minor offense, that he would get him help.
The case was a window to how horrifying the existing system was. And the case involved somebody that had severe psychosis, but the court had absolutely no authority to get him into the system. And so my only option was to release him back to the street on a conditional release and tell him to go see a doctor. Not only was I unable to fulfill the promise I made to his parents, but I put him at risk, I put the community at risk, I probably put my job at risk, but I followed the law.
20 years later, Miami-Dade faces a crisis. Nearly 10% of its adult population suffers from serious mental illness. But Judge Leifman presides over a system of care for people with mental illness that he hopes could be a model for the rest of the country.
All rise. Thank you, gentlemen. You swear a firm testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you very much. We started very slowly, just with nonviolent misdemeanor cases. I know you don't look for trouble. These are really minor offenses. You don't hurt anybody, and I really appreciate that. You're a nice man. Yes, sir. I just don't like you having to be out on the street and getting sick. Are you hearing voices today?
Little voices.
Little voices?
Little voices.
Okay. And we had to prove that this would actually work. And in a very short period of time, it did.
Judge, Mr. Alvarez is receptive to JDP services. The recommendation at this time is a residential treatment facility. He expresses the need for that service. He has been taken to central intake and has been placed on the wait list.
Great. Hang in there with us. It's a lot better outcome once I can get you going, okay?
I'm tired of the cycle.
I know. I'm glad you see that. We're going to work with you and get you everything you need. All right, good luck. So what we've been able to do is a program that we've set up to actually help individuals navigate these complex systems so that they can get the treatments that they need, get the assistance they need, so that they can actually recover.
The program Leifman pioneered is officially titled the 11th Judicial Circuit Criminal Mental Health Project. But to the team of people who chart its course on a daily basis, it's known as JDP, short for the Jail Diversion Project.
Okay, I wanted to talk about how many people we are enrolling in the project. There have been 80 people enrolled and 7 people are pending. So I'm going to assume that we're doing really pretty well towards our goal of 100. So I think we're on target.
Morning, Judge. Alejandro Aristizal at the Jail Diversion Program. On Mr. Dolan's case, the state approved his participation in diversion. We did screen and assess him. He meets criteria. We would like to request, Your Honor, transfer the case to our mental health court and have him sign an order.
Jail diversion helps people that are identified with serious mental illness when they're in jail to be released to the community with the treatments and services that are necessary to help them move towards recovery. That's what we do.
Jail diversion is not your regular route through the system. Thank you, Judge. What the state attorney's office will do is come up with a diversion offer. Good, man. I'm gonna be working with you for the next year.
Okay, good.
If you're gonna put in your half and work with us, this is gonna happen within 2 weeks, all right? It's good to meet you in person. All right, take care. If you participate in jail diversion and you are successful throughout these 12 months, we are going to dismiss your charges, and that's huge. We're on our way to see Trevor. He spent about 6 months in jail before he was approved for diversion. And this will be our first encounter with him outside of the courthouse. He's about the same age Justin was when we worked on getting Justin out of jail and into treatment.
I was in jail for a month and a half. It was unpleasant. It was not the Holiday Inn.
My job was to go out and talk to Justin and try to get him to agree to work with us. And Justin wasn't easy to work with.
I was very sick. I was very sick.
And
I told him, what did I tell him? Al-Qaeda was on Miami Beach. Do you remember that one?
Hey. What's up, man?
How you doing?
What's going on? We really like seeing people outside of the courthouse.
Yeah.
We don't want to just have a 2-minute conversation.
In the Miami community mental health model, there's no universal pathway to recovery. For clients like 22-year-old Trevor Dolan, a jail in-reach screening by JDP specialists determines not only a diagnosis, but the resources he'll need going forward. For Trevor, that means his first 60 days will be spent at Betterway.
Have you ever been in residential treatment before?
No, I have not.
So
This is my first time. This is my first time ever getting any type of treatment.
I'm glad to hear
Did
that.
high school on my own, did all type of stuff.
That's what we're about, trying to show you that you're going to learn stuff here that you have to take out into the real world. You're seeing the doctor too, psychiatry.
Yeah, I've seen her once so far.
And the medications that she prescribed, how do you think they're working for you?
I haven't taken them. I haven't even gotten them yet.
You haven't gotten them yet?
No, she just prescribed them to me. So I vilified.
We need to get that prescription.
All right, good, let's do
I need
it.
to work on that. And you want to pursue work, right?
Yes, I want to start working like now.
Yeah, you're not going to be out working late. You know that. You know that, right? Yeah. You know, I'm in recovery myself.
Yeah?
I mean, I've been here 10 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, man. Got wife, family,
That's crazy.
house. I mean, things get better. Is there anything you need?
What do you mean?
I don't know. I see you dressed nice, shoes, watch. Do you need anything?
No, I'm good. I'm
good.
I got everything I need.
It's great to see you again, man.
Yeah, you
Congrats.
too, Alejandro.
You got an awesome 30 days in already.
I do.
I can't wait till we got 12 months in. Mental health doesn't fit into the criminal justice system. It's not written in protocols. There are no standard operating procedures for what we do. So we often think of ourselves as the glue that holds it all together, the translators, the interpreters. Mornings are rush, rush, rush. So it takes a lot of coordination. Trevor's new. He is in residential treatment. He's on an ankle monitor. We actually saw him yesterday. We had some issues. He was not being given his psychotropic medication.
I'm sorry, he's residential?
Residential.
He's there all the time, and have not explained to him. No one supervising his medication.
Not until tonight.
I'm not feeling good about that. The mental health diversion court. It's a very different role for judges. Not all judges, I think, take to it. You're really traveling outside the boundaries of where you normally travel as a judge in a regular courtroom. You were in there, you're in the trenches, you're much more involved and invested, I would say, in the specific cases and in the clients. So Trevor gets an all press, though, if the restitution's paid on all the cases?
Yes, Judge.
Oh, okay, good. You definitely have to believe in rehabilitation. You have to believe in redemption. I think that that's really a cornerstone of being a judge and the diversion program, is to make sure that they know that we're there for them and that we believe in them. All right, so Mr. Dolan, if all goes well here in this program, your cases are going to be dismissed.
Yes, ma'am.
So this court is unlike the court you started out. In that court, you're being prosecuted.
Correct.
Ultimately, it was about whether or not you're going to go to trial or take a plea. We're all basically on the same team here. We all want to see you succeed. All right, so the state, your attorney, the court, we all want to see your case get dismissed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you.
I think if you're not someone that's really in this field, they think if they just give the person medication, a pill, or a shot, they're going to be fine, that their lives are going to turn around and they're going to be healthy and have happy lives. Well, if you're homeless, if you have a drug addiction, if you have a lot of trauma history, all the medication is going to do is reduce your symptoms. It's not going to help you thrive, survive, be hopeful, and happy. And so we've learned that we have to address all those other social issues on top of their psychiatric treatment to make this work.
But recovery is never going to be easy, especially given the complex system of care that currently exists.
You going down?
It's difficult for anyone to navigate, much less someone with a mental illness who's just been released from jail.
I'm a certified recovery peer specialist by the state of Florida, which means I have a little piece of paper I pay $75 for every year to do my job. I get people out of jail every week. I get them where they're going in the community, get them to their housing, Camilla's house, shelter, ALF, three-quarter-way house. I bring their medication, and then I get them linked to treatment, and I follow up with them in treatment. Hey, Yuri. What's up, brother? You remember me?
Yeah, from the program.
So here's what's gonna happen today. Are you hungry?
Yeah, I'm hungry.
All right, we're gonna get something to eat. But first of all, I got t-shirt, jeans, to get the blues off. You know, you go like this.
Yeah, they taught me that. My dad taught me that.
Yeah. It might be a little big, but that's all I got right now.
When I first started in 2003, we would set up treatments and services for people that appeared to be the right thing to do.
How about these to sleep in? Something to chill?
I like those.
And we would help people to get to wherever they were going to be living with treatments available, and they would run away in the first 5 minutes.
They used to get people out of jail and tell them, you have court next month, you have to be at this address on Monday to get your medicine, and they would send them in a taxi by themselves, and they would never see them again. It was that simple. You know, what would you do if you got out of jail and somebody gave you a free taxi ride? You'd say, I'm gonna go do what I wanna do, which is not this.
So we had to come back to the table and say, okay, what are we missing here?
How's the food?
It's good.
Yeah. You owe me $7.50.
And at the same time, on the federal level, peer specialists were being looked at as a good alternative to engaging people in the process, in their own process of recovery.
We got about 30 beds from jail diversion. We got guys on the 6th floor and sometimes on the 7th floor. I do a couple groups with the guys. We get coffee, we get food, we go to AA, NA meetings. I take them to the doctor's appointments. Just little things to help make it easier, you know, to know that they got an extra supporter in the community. Sign in. All right, guys, going over the basics today. What does education mean to you?
Being educated on our sickness.
We can just say health.
Health, yeah.
Because, you know, this is the same category as heart disease or diabetes or something. Just because people say you have a mental illness doesn't make you weak or anything, you know?
Sometimes I feel like that, though. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're a lot stronger than a lot of people out there because you're dealing with stuff that a lot of normal people don't deal with. Yeah. So you got to think of it as strength-based. You know, so many people have put us down so many times over the years, but we actually...
I've been did like that a lot.
Yeah, but now we're going to give you the tools. Let's do a little skit right now.
I do what you... Oh, you know, let me do what you... Come on, please. Come on, let me do it with you.
Kevin, you can't go.
It was a skit, bro.
Let me tell you what, like he doing.
Oh, come on, Kevin. No, come on.
Okay. You gonna be serious? Okay, we're gonna do something else. We're gonna do something. Well, I'm gonna do something else. All right, you my friend. I'm the bad influence, okay? Wait. I'm gonna set the scene. You're gonna stand up for yourself.
Okay.
We're gonna be about 1 minute.
Okay.
And then we're gonna sit down.
Okay.
Okay. So I got these dumb kids. We're gonna go hustle them. So I need you to come with me to come talk to them so we can get money off them. You gonna come? I'll give you half.
No, Justin. No.
Why not?
I'm not gonna do that.
Why not? I thought you were my friend.
I just got out of jail.
You just got out of jail? Me too, man.
I don't want to go back. And they might beat the heck out of us. Even though we grown, we young, look at we never know what they have on them, Justin.
That's what these sneakers are for, man. You can run.
I ain't that bad, Justin.
The Miami model based on comprehensive community care is unique in the United States, but it is not a new idea.
Hearings begin in the Senate this week on our bills to combat mental illness and mental retardation. Almost every American family at some stage will experience or has experienced a case of mental affliction, and we have to offer something more than crowded custodial care in our state institutions.
The hospitals were horrific, and there was a lot of torture and human experimentation going on, and we started to become more aware of these horrors, and people started to put a stop to it.
Our task is to prevent these conditions. Our next is to treat them more effectively and sympathetically in the patient's own community.
President Kennedy, his last public signing was to create this national community mental health system, but not $1 got appropriated because of the escalation of the Vietnam War and his assassination. It just kind of got forgotten.
The goal was to deinstitutionalize. So there were supposed to be community centers, health centers where families could go, where they could get their medication, they could do their treatment, and government and lawmakers just didn't give the money, the resources that was needed to do it.
And so we close all the hospitals, we significantly cut back on federal housing, they go to sentencing guidelines to get tough on crime, they go to the war on drugs. You had a tripling of the number of people getting arrested since the 80s, and these folks just get swept up into it. And so we never deinstitutionalized, we transferred responsibilities from the really crappy, horrible, dangerous state hospital to the really crappy, dangerous, horrible jail.
11 years ago, I was on the 9th floor in the Dade County Jail. I'm laying in a pile of feces, vomit, and urine. I'm sick, I'm hearing voices, I'm seeing things. People are lined up like sardines on the floor. Bah, 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 bah. And this guy comes with this white powder out of his socks. He's got real high socks, like Dr. J used to wear, you know, and he starts sprinkling this white powder. And on the same disgusting floor, people are doing lines of it off the floor. When I was arrested, I had medication with me. And I told them I need to go to the hospital. I take pills. And they were like, oh, we'll put you on the psych floor. I'm like, thank goodness. Some people that understand me. If I get up there, it's way worse, man. There was people screaming around the clock. And the abuse from the corrections officer. He beat a guy unconscious in the cell next to me. And I just heard this guy screaming at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, please God, no. Please God, stop. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, and this is his flesh just hitting the concrete until he just hit one last time and he went silent. I didn't sleep for 3 weeks. I was on the 9th floor. It just made my mental health worse. And, you know, my bond was only like $500. I had some money in my account, but I didn't know how to pay it. The people that stay in jail, are the seriously mentally ill because they don't know how to navigate the system. You're either too poor, too ill, too sick to get out.
What happens is you then have systems that are developed to process people in cases for crimes, not a system developed to assess and move people into treatment. So guess what happens? You end up spending your entire adult life recycling through this criminal justice system. I tell people it was the definition of insanity, where we kept doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different outcome.
You got kids?
Yeah.
Yeah?
3.
You got 3 kids?
Yeah, 2 and 1 on the way now. You think
You're a
she was-
busy man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go inside to see what's going on.
All right. Sounds good.
When JDP was started, Charlie Gonzalez would not have been eligible. Only misdemeanor cases were allowed. But now, third and sometimes second-degree felonies can be considered. Charged with crimes that in criminal court could spell prison, today marks Charlie's halfway point in jail diversion.
Mr. Gonzalez, how are you?
Pretty good at yourself, Your Honor.
In a criminal justice system, there's really just 3 parties. There's the defense attorneys, often represented by the public defender's office. There's the state attorney's office in Florida. Outside of Florida, sometimes they're known as district attorneys. And then there's the judge. And theoretically, the system works best when both sides fight equally hard and justice is supposed to fall through the middle. And so doing a collaboration in criminal justice system is not a natural act. And so it had to be created.
A community has to agree together that they're going to solve whatever particular problem exists in their community. So we all come to the table and we can put, turfs to one side and say, we're gonna build something really meaningful here.
He's been attending all his appointments at Camilla's outpatient. He just went on Monday and saw the doctor and adhering with all recommendations, really. And I think he has had some big news in the last couple of days. It looks like he's going to be expecting his 3rd boy. Yeah.
So pretty much everyone is on board with we are not going to criminalize mental illness. And that is a big shift. That's a big cultural shift in the community where people are actually seeing the mentally ill as being part of this community, not being those people.
Today we're here with private counsel and the state to possibly motion for a release from the GPS ankle monitor.
Immediately after Alejandro took Charlie's case, he was evaluated and he started receiving treatment. He called me 2 weeks after he had been admitted, and we're having a conversation at night, and he's telling me how much he loves, his job and how his life is going great. And this is the first positive conversation we had with him. And like 10 minutes into it, I go, listen, man, are you taking any meds? And he goes, yeah, Nick, and it feels great.
Yeah, I know you've been doing consistently very well since the beginning, and you want me to take you off the monitor?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes?
It's possible.
All right. Date is an agreement?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, so this time I'm gonna order him off the GPS. All right, so we're at the 6-month mark right now, and keep working, save your money,
Thank you, Your Honor.
because your kids are gonna spend it all.
Yeah, I already spent it all on.
They're gonna spend it even more.
Thank you.
All right.
He was looking at 5 years minimum. So we could have gone to trial, and the judge could have gone anywhere from 5 years to prison to life.
All right, let's hear about it.
He was not a real threat to society, but he could have very well become a threat to society. This is all they needed to do. They just needed to diagnose him, and they needed to give him the right medication in the right amount. And this kid turned into a new leaf, and he has a total different life. And since he entered into the JDP program,
Oh, man, my ankle feels a little lighter.
What we do is challenging. We work with human tragedy all day. And when you have success, you got to take it and run with it and really enjoy it.
Oh wait, check this out. This is from Jersey. I've had this thing since I was probably 12 years old. I'm not gonna say how it got here, I special ordered it. This is it, man. I got a couple of appreciations from the court. Got an award one year. Then in the Washington Post later that year, they did a whole story on me and then how things need to change and we need to change the system. Like, you shouldn't have to go to jail to get treatment. It doesn't really make sense. This is like the chill part. You know, you get home, you say a prayer, you meditate here, you know, give thanks. And it helps keep you focused on what you're doing, you know, because you have to first take care of yourself to be able to give back. And that's why this work is important, to give back and help other people.
Recovery rates for people with mental illnesses are better than heart disease and diabetes. The earlier you catch it, like any illness, the better services you get someone, the better recovery rates you're going to get. They're just people, and they want to do everything that everybody else wants to do. They want to be happy, they want to be hopeful, they want to have dreams, and they can't get there without all these supports in place. And so part of it was identifying competent systems of care in the community, because some of it didn't even exist for people to get the services they needed to recover.
The Dade Family Counseling Center opened its doors in 2003, shortly after JDP was launched. It serves as a hub for JDP clients whose needs range from administration of psychotropic drugs to guidance on how to organize your day.
So you get up in the morning, take your medicine or you shower, whatever you do, you eat your breakfast, and then you come to Dade Family. So you start getting that because what that does, that makes your day do what?
Better.
And makes your day better. I was an instructor also in the military. And a military instructor is a person that can teach anything. When you develop that, you also have to develop a way of helping people. And that's why I like teaching classes, because I'm looking for that one person. That's all I'm looking for, that one person that gets it. And when that one person gets it, it's gonna spread around.
He's ready to take over.
Come on, Stephon, get yourself. The ball is in your court. I'm gonna move my stuff out your way. Okay.
Even as he nears completion of JDP, Stephon Berry comes to Dade Family regularly for group and individual therapy, as well as medication. It's a regimen he hopes can help him maintain work and find stability long after court supervision ends.
I'm going to talk job related, because when I'm at work, I have to know the product knowledge at work. I have to know that, but I have mental illness that's going on within me. And I know for a fact that when it's time for me to go to work, I have to make the Excels, I have to make sure my area is clean, I recover everything. All that stuff is based on organizational skills. And I'm really happy that I shared that to y'all.
Okay.
Let me tell you that Stephon actually was one of the ones that was very interested in the help. He's had a lot of goods and bads. He's gotten work, he's been fired, then he's been laid off. We're gonna keep helping him with that structure and organization that he needs in order to avoid decompensation, because that's what we are most concerned about, Stephon, his symptoms.
I try my best every day. That's all I can do.
Trevor, he successfully completed 60 days at a better way. He's now living independently with a maintenance manager. He's engaging in work. He's trying to see if he's going to do deliveries with a wine company. Not sure if that's the best, but it is a job. It is employment and it is legit.
Also, what about those programs at Miami-Dade Community College for him? He fits into that category.
He does. He's not expressing educational goals yet. I think that he wants to get solid in the community, but we should bring that up.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity.
As you all have heard me say, hope is the cornerstone of recovery, and it really would be helpful for a young guy like him to not only get through his court plea, but to think about what's next for him, what's my long-range plan, and that's what we can help him with.
My new job, I started yesterday, did 8 hours.
Put it behind schedule, Rich.
I guess I did a good job because they asked me to come back here today. I just want to show the JDP people that they chose a great person for this. You kind of have like that angel like looking over your shoulder. So if you do have a thought of doing bad or doing something that's not really with the curriculum, you have these people to think about, you know, how would that make me look? How would that make them look? You know, I never really had that before. It was all about me. and I just want to impress everybody.
I always had a normal life. After I had this whole schizophrenia thing, it really drowned my mind. Like, everything was crazy. Like, I didn't know what was going on at the time. It's real psychological warfare. As I move forward right now, my program is my only way to conclusions and everything that my thinking process needs from the program. I think my thought process is always messed up. But when the program started coming through and the teachers start helping, that's how my mind getting better. Like, I know for a fact my mind's getting better, like everything.
The criminal justice system really should be more preserved, if you like, for those that are really dangerous. People who are a danger to others. If they're coming into the system, and we know eventually the criminal justice system is not the appropriate place for them, what you want to do is intervene. You want to fix the problem so that they're constructive, they're contributing members of our community.
I've came far, trust me. I was just real reckless. Could say I was very immature, really. These walls right here, yeah, these are the walls we built right here. Every time you see one of these walls, remember me.
Charlie is a good worker. His employers really like him, and he really loves his job. I see him making money. I see him as a good leader. So we can only hope that the instruments and the tools to cope maturely that he received through JDP will carry him through.
The tools and instruments of any recovery begin with whatever resources a community has to offer. But the challenge lies in connecting those resources and figuring out what's missing. For Miami, that process started in 2000 at a meeting with researchers from the Policy Research Associates in upstate New York.
We were trying to think through a mechanism that we could effectively go into a community and work with them and do strategic planning and help them along. So we had come up with this model, which we called sequential intercept. Steve Leifman came over and said, will you guys come down here and do one of the mappings for us?
Basically, these are the different intercepts of the criminal justice system. So right here you have initial detention and arraignment. Here you have jails. So this is the jails in the prison. This is the reentry process to get back into the community. And then this is back in the community. So this is probation and parole. And what we do is we map the different communities and we figure out where their gaps in resources are.
When Judge Leifman and his team mapped out the intersections between people with mental illness and the criminal justice system in Miami, it revealed huge gaps, not only for people who had been arrested, but also for those who hadn't yet entered the system.
And so we realized that we needed a pre-arrest diversion program to try to limit the flow into the system. And that meant we needed to train more police officers so that they would make less arrests of people with serious mental illnesses.
Hey guys, how are you? How you doing, sir? How's everything going? What do you suffer from? Schizophrenia. So you've been to crisis before, right? And you suffer from schizophrenia? Yeah. Okay, we'll do the best we can to help you guys out.
What is your name? I want to pray for you. Can I pray
I'm Officer Coker.
Thank you, Father, for this brave man, Officer Coker, who did shoot his gun in the line of duty and survived and killed 2 people, right?
No, but thank you, though.
Yet?
No.
Or you're going to kill 2 people before you get over.
Oh.
And you won't get over it, but you have to save your life, and you're gonna survive.
Thank you so much.
The prophet.
Thank you.
Officer Coker.
Have a good night. Hello. How are you? When I first got on the street and someone approached me aggressively or fast or their speech pattern was off, it definitely, made me nervous and scared. It goes from being a calm situation to, a situation where now he's combative, I'm combative, and then next thing you know, someone might get hurt. So those are things that the training has taught me as an officer.
Crisis Intervention Team Policing is this wonderful 40-hour training program developed in Memphis, Tennessee that teaches the police how to identify someone who's in crisis, how to de-escalate a situation, and where to take the individual as opposed to arresting them.
CIT is first and foremost officer safety. So what do you think emotions can do to you when you're out there on the street talking to someone? It can get you hurt.
It's really no fault of law enforcement that they didn't have the tools, the resources, or the knowledge to divert to treatment. someone's loitering and they're not responding to the officer's directions, you are non-compliant, you are uncooperative, and I'm arresting you. You know, let's go, buddy. You're going to jail.
Can I have a volunteer come up? Thank you, thank you.
Morning, how are you? I'm Mama Diaz.
I'm so happy that you're here.
Me too.
Will you join me in singing the national anthem?
Where?
We're right here.
Right now?
Okay, no, please, take a step back. Just take a step back. Okay.
Not a problem.
Okay, what made you take a step back?
Well, what CIT teaches the officer is to see more than just, you know, the obvious potential crime.
If I just asked you to take a step back, it did not compromise your officer's safety, and you were able to just take a step
You
back.
gotta compromise sometimes with these people, man. I mean, it can't always be you. You're gonna escalate it sometimes.
Exactly. Beautiful. Thank you.
The first day I was here, I learned more in those 8 hours than I did in 9 years with the Highway Patrol. Not taking anything away from the patrol was great. It's just that us as law enforcement officers, we're made to wear so many hats, and now in today's society, they also want us to wear a white lab coat, you know, to try to diagnose these people. We can't do, we're not medical professionals, but here it teaches us a little bit more to recognize some of these things that people are going through.
The whole purpose of CIT is let's decriminalize the mentally ill, let's properly assess, let's get the person to the right place and divert them to treatment when it's appropriate.
How long ago was it that you stopped taking your medication? A year? Let me go ahead and speak to the mom, okay?
Help me.
Okay.
Something wrong with her. She needs help.
Okay, but remember, she also needs to be on that medication. She hasn't been taking it for over a year. She's 16 years old, Mom. You need to get that medication for her, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
When we started the project, there were approximately 118,000 arrests per year in Dade County overall. Now it's down to about 56,000. And so police injuries have almost stopped entirely. Injuries to people with mental illnesses have stopped. And police shootings went from almost 2 a month for people with serious mental illnesses in our community to maybe 5 or 6 in the last 8 to 10 years.
What are you feeling right now? Cold? Just relax, okay? You're good.
Judge Leifman and his team have spent nearly 2 decades implementing the jail diversion project. But on any given day in the U.S., there are still 400,000 people with serious mental illnesses behind bars, costing taxpayers more than $12 billion a year. Given this national crisis, Miami has become a model for other communities.
One of the things you really have to let them know is...
This week we had a group of judges, the elected prosecutor, and providers from Cleveland come in. They're really working hard to try to replicate this.
What's the most difficult part about your job?
Putting out fires. Say I have like 10 good clients. And I would just love to hang out with them all day and eat empanadas and cannolis, right? You're doing great, we're doing great. Let's pat each other on the back, you know? But it's more like, this guy's out of meds, this guy needs to be hospitalized, this guy took off, go find him. Even though you'd rather just see people do well all the time, we can't close a blind eye to, you know, what's really happening.
Hey.
What happened?
I got kept pregnant with him. I moved out here.
No, you should have told me. You should have told the guy. Let's see if I got some food.
We've made a lot of progress, but we still have not figured out yet how to deal with the most severely ill that keep recycling.
You want a piece of cake?
Yeah.
That's a good cake, man.
97 people. Over a 5-year period, spent 27,000 days in the Miami-Dade County Jail and conservatively cost taxpayers $13.7 million, and we got absolutely nothing for it, nothing. It's taken us a long time to figure out what most of this population that is that sick need is to have all the essential elements of recovery in one place.
Ironically, the site Judge Leifman has in mind for a first-of-its-kind jail diversion center is a former state mental health facility.
We're going to remove the feel of it being a jail or an institution. For people with mental illnesses, we're going to take you to some horrible facility that's under-resourced and understaffed. It's going to look like crap. We're going to throw you on a bed and medicate you against your will. Who wants to go get treated? And so this facility, people are going to be happy to be here. They're going to understand it's really to help them get into recovery and not to punish them, torture them, but make them want to get better.
In the absence of a one-stop shop, A patchwork system of care is a reality the JDP team must face on a daily basis.
Don't forget to bring your prescription for Abilify.
Who did I talk to about that? My counselor doesn't have it, so I have to go get a whole new prescription.
I thought you had it.
No, my counselor has it.
I'm gonna have to keep a closer eye on you, man. I'm gonna have to assign a staff to really be on this because I'm just not getting really good information. So I'm gonna give you a shorter reset date. I'm gonna have you come back in 2 weeks and we're gonna work between you, Walter, or Justin and me. We're gonna try to make sure you're aware of all your appointments.
Okay.
All right? Okay, I'll see you in a little while.
Okay.
All right. Bye. Nobody is quarterbacking the team in the community. Nobody can tell you, the therapist, the case manager, the director, the court liaison, nobody in these agencies can tell you what's going on with the client. I'm a little frustrated. Sorry about that, but. He's reporting our drug test results. We're already getting started on that. Check this out. What's it saying? And that's positive also?
All right.
Afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Dr. Tonight.
Please be seated.
On page 64, Trevor Dolan. Trevor, what's going on, babe? So Trevor also came back positive for alcohol. There are several matters right now that I need to manage better with Trevor. So we're gonna be a little more involved and have him talk to us more frequently.
So you've taken on a lot, school, work, but when you take on a lot, there's also the potential that you're not able to satisfy and comply with everything. So we want you to be careful. And now you come in with a positive for alcohol, so that's concerning. So let me hear from you a little bit about what you're thinking of all this.
Well, I can understand the challenges it would be taking all this stuff in, but I did get offered by the guy I'm staying with to quit my job, so I can easily substitute it with the meetings or everything that I need to do. Me working at the winery, I don't really see it as a temptation. I don't drink on the job. I had a drink when I came home yesterday.
Now that's not good. It's jeopardizing your sobriety and it's jeopardizing your status here in this program. And that's important because Trevor, if you were to go back to division, what's he facing? Judge, he has over 4 felony cases, so we made an exception to allow you to participate in this program. I have approximately 45 years state prison. You understand that, Trevor? The next time you think about having that drink, or you think about not doing something that you're supposed to be doing, you have 45 years where you're facing. If you went back to the regular division, that's a long time in prison to jeopardize for alcohol, okay?
Correct.
All right, nobody wants that, okay?
Thank
All
you.
right, Trevor.
All right, Trevor. You good.
The Jail Diversion Project processes nearly 600 felony and misdemeanor cases a year. The recidivism rate for those that finish the program is less than 25%, but not everyone finishes.
See how you look picture perfect, and then all of a sudden within a minute everything could just collapse. Hey Joe, how are you? I just got out of court and Trevor tested positive for alcohol.
Clients can slip, participation declines, or symptoms return to complicate their path to recovery.
Go take care
I'm
of
really
yourself.
reevaluating my life right
Seriously,
now. I need to really think about.
It's not worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
On one hand, I think there's a lot of potential when you see somebody young like Trevor Dolan.
All right, Justin.
All right, buddy.
All right.
But he needs to wrap his brain around the fact that he's going to have to contend with his issues for the rest of his life. Young kids can be very scary just because they're usually the toughest cases.
Charlie was supposed to successfully complete 12 months of court supervision today. We were all going to be clapping. We were all going to be happy about him completing this portion in his life where the court oversees his treatment. And we learned some really difficult news. Unfortunately, Charlie was arrested on a new felony. The team and I have been, thinking about this. You're always trying to second guess, what could we have done? What could he have done? What could his family have done? But you have to be resilient, you have to be tolerant, and understand that he came into the criminal justice system and the mental health care system for a reason. He needs help. Our doors are open to Charlie. If the state attorney's office allows us to work with Charlie, we definitely want to take them up on that.
I've come so far, and it takes some time for me to actually sit down and reflect. Some people tell me they forget that past, let that stuff go, and I can't do that. I never will. I'll always remember what it took for me to get to where I'm at, and I'll always remember what people helped me, and I'll always remember every little detail. I will. Good morning, good morning. My last semester, I got straight A's, so this semester I'm trying to do the same thing.
Okay, so last class, what did we talk about? Social comparison theory, okay? And what did it say?
It said by watching people, it can influence you.
Yes. What else?
Monkey see, monkey do.
Monkey see, monkey do, right?
But by the time February comes around, I'm a free man, and I'll be a free man.
We was talking about stereotyping, stigmas, and how people make you feel concerning your mental illness. Who ever been discriminated by? I've been discriminated by. My stigma.
I have.
You know.
So because we have a mental disabled.
Well, mental illness.
In our mind that makes us dumb.
That makes us look like.
That's what the stigma is. That's what they're trying to stigmatize you as. But what is in your recovery toolbox to help you deal with what you have?
You go by not discriminating against others. By not saying anything about it. By being humble about how another person should feel. When I graduated, I felt better. I've been looking for my jobs. I'm looking for jobs lately. I always take my daily routines here to keep myself nourished. I come here, I get on the computer, I make sure I keep myself conquering who I am. I make sure I love what I do. I love what I make in life. My light bulb just stay up there. I keep my light bulb up.
With the Jail Diversion Project in its 19th year, Judge Leifman has decided now is the time to try and expand JDP across the state.
I'm not aware of any legislation like this in the United States. And so I'm hopeful if we get it done, this will not only be great for Florida, but it'll also be great for the country as a model. And the other priority is the building. There's still a few minor details that we're working out with the county and city. They're very, very close to getting those resolved. So it is possible within the next 5 weeks, we'll actually have a shovel in the ground. And we're really hopeful on that.
I'm very, very pleased and honored to have Judge Leifman with us today to talk a little bit about mental health in our state.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here to discuss these very important issues. My name is Steve Leifman. The statistics are stunning, and we now have the largest trained squad of CIT officers in the United States. We have over 6,500 officers trained. The recidivism rate of our misdemeanor program dropped from 72% to 20% because of a warm handoff and making sure people were getting treated.
Buenos días, good morning. Come on in.
Hey, Stefan.
It's a nice Tuesday, and I'm happy I'm here today.
The program worked so well, the state attorney allowed us to expand it to our felony nonviolent cases. That program has seen a recidivism drop to about 25% and has saved the county so far 31,000 jail bed days, 84 years of jail bed days.
This could be your next to final report. Can you imagine that?
No.
I can't either, man.
I still remember standing on that bench, man.
I still remember you in orange.
Nearly in tears.
Judge, we're really excited about Trevor's future. All his randomized drug tests are coming back negative. He actually just found work.
What kind of work?
I'm a busboy at a nice restaurant.
Good.
Yeah, the managers come up to me. They even gave me $25, and they said this is for being most helpful.
I'll be happy to be here and give you a round of applause on your big day, okay? Thanks, Trevor.
It has been so successful that Dade County actually closed one of its 3 main jails 6 years ago at an actual cost savings of $12 million a year. It's been closed for 6 years. That's $72 million in real savings.
And Your Honor, we would ask to reset this case in Division 55, the JDP program.
Good morning, Your Honor. Erica Gerson, Assistant Public Defender. I'll be representing Mr. Gonzalez in mental health diversion.
You know, Mr. Gonzalez and I go way back. We've been through a lot of cases here, a lot of violations, a lot of jail time. That we only want you to succeed.
Yes, I understand that, Your Honor. You've always been a fair judge to me.
Yeah. Well, the state has also been very fair because in a lot of jurisdictions they would have given you a severe amount of incarceration instead. I will grant the request to transfer the case over to Division 55.
Thank you, Your Honor. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So what did my county do? They were smart, they're committed, and they deserve all the credit. Our mayor and our commissioner, they've reinvested a lot of that money to building the first of its kind one-stop shop for the most acutely ill that keep recycling through the community. We know treatment works. People with mental illnesses have better recovery rates than people with diabetes and heart disease. The key is helping them access appropriate and good services.
Trevor, what's your plan looking like this morning?
I have an appointment with my primary doctor at 3 o'clock.
Okay. Did they talk to your lawyer?
Oh, he told me to call him today, too.
Call him.
Right now?
Call him.
I'm confident that if this bill becomes law, we will begin to decriminalize mental illness. We can apply a population health model to these individuals with these illnesses rather than a criminal justice model.
On page 28 and 29, Charlie Gonzalez.
All right, so as much as the whole year obviously has been a bad year and a sad year, I want you to think of today as being a positive day.
Yes,
It's a
ma'am,
good
I
thing.
have.
Okay.
Yeah, a very positive day.
Each and every one of us is imperfect. There's always that one person or that group of people or that place that really helps you understand and feels that welcome, that somebody cares about you.
Father, she's been a big help ever since I've been out of jail, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, Stefan.
We will reduce homelessness, we will improve our public safety, we will save taxpayers money, and equally important, we will allow people with mental illnesses to have lives in recovery with hope and opportunity. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Judge, if we could call, please, on page 26 and 34, Trevor Dolan.
All right. Hi, Trevor.
Hello, Your Honor. How are you?
How are you?
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. Good afternoon, everyone.
Judge, it's a pleasure to report that Trevor's been engaged in treatment and mental health substance use disorders services for 12 months now. He's active in recovery. He's been testing negative for all illicit drugs for over 8 months now. He's engaged in all treatment services, but in addition to that, he's maintaining full-time employment. He's going to school. We're really happy with the progress he's made throughout the 12 months. I think his lawyer has seen amazing progress, his family. We're really happy to advocate today or to inform the court that he's done excellent in these last 12 months. And today should be his final report.
Excellent. Let me hear from the state.
Your Honor, Mr. Dolan has definitely earned the state's announcement today as to F-17-14775 and F-17-14368. The state announced a null pros.
Trevor, we just have a small certificate here, but we're so proud of you. Can I give you a hug?
Yeah, I would
okay.
like one.
Oh, that's awesome. You did a great job. You're a
Thank you.
star.
Thank
you really are.
Thank you.
Man, this is awesome. Keep it up. I'll see you next week.
All right, next week?
Oh, yeah.
Here?
I'm going to be on, you know. I'll call you. I'll see you at the restaurant, wherever, Better Way, somewhere. We'll catch up with you.
Okay. I didn't think it'd be this strenuous, you know, with the appointment they put on me. And then my first mistake didn't help me either. When I got tested positive for alcohol, But at the end of the day, people are trying to help you. Justin, Alejandro, they're really just trying to like be somebody that maybe you never had in your past or maybe you never had, period. Oh, this one is the prettiest.
Not everybody that graduates gets a cupcake. We just happen to have cupcakes. It's not like a thing we have planned. We planned it. Congrats, Joe.
It was good. Miami-Dade County Mental Health Court in the Circuit Court of the State of Florida, 11th Judicial Circuit, certificate of completion awarded to Trevor Dolan. It's me.
In the next 2 months, we have many visitors coming. Our first set of visitors are coming from New Jersey. We have visitors coming from Michigan. We have visitors coming from somewhere else I can't even remember. So we should be proud. And you know what? We know what our challenges are, but that's only working towards systems improvement, right? We just want to get better and better.
So thank you so much. I want to first thank the Ornsteins for their friendship and for producing this amazing documentary, the Addiction Policy Forum for putting all this together today, Columbia University for co-sponsoring, Rob Reiner, who was so kind and generous with his time to narrate the documentary, and my good friend Stephanie Lamell, who has taught me so much about mental health issues and how to address it. And we're really excited now to talk to you in a few minutes about some of these issues, but I just wanted to give you a few comments. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is that, you know, what you realize after being on the bench for several years is that in many ways, the criminal justice system is a repository of many failed public policies. And there really is no greater failed public policy than our treatment towards people with serious mental illnesses. And it really makes sense if you think about it, because what we've done is we have applied a criminal justice model to an illness. And had we applied a population health or a disease model, we would have gotten much, much better outcomes. And, you know, it's stunning, but 70% of all people in jails and prisons in the United States have either a serious mental illness, a substance use disorder, or both. And so if you think about it in those terms, we almost need specialty courts for the 30% that don't have these illnesses, and we could apply a criminal justice model to them. And for the rest of the 70%, we should be applying this therapeutic model where we're assessing people, identifying what their treatment needs are, and helping them access treatment. We would have much, much better outcomes if we did that. You know, these are expensive problems. Even as well as we have done, my county still spends about $636,000 a day. That's $232 million a year to warehouse 2,400 people with serious mental illnesses. And the outcomes for that population are terrible if they're not getting the kinds of services that we are able to provide them. My journey actually into this world, I touched upon it in the documentary, but it was really pretty eye-opening and pretty horrific for me. I was getting ready to go on the bench, and I was approached by the assistant public defender and the assistant state attorney, who asked me if I would speak to a couple whose son was in jail on a case I was handling back in 2000. And these were low-level misdemeanor cases, and the individuals were still in custody. And so they brought this lovely, sophisticated couple into my chambers, and they were just terribly distraught. The mom was crying, the dad was shaking, and they literally began to beg me to get their son help. They told me he was brilliant, He'd gone to Harvard. He had a late onset of schizophrenia, and he was now homeless and recycling. And I was pretty new at the time. And, new judges think they have a lot more power and wisdom than we really do. And I made the mistake of promising them that I'd get their son help because I assumed we must have a system of care for people that got arrested with mental illnesses. And spoiler alert, we don't. And so I made this promise that I could get them help. And so as I was going back into the courtroom, the mom stopped me and she said, Judge, there's one more thing you need to know about my son. She said, respectfully, he probably knows more about the mental health system than you do. I looked at her. I wasn't really quite sure what she was trying to tell me. And she said, oh, you see, my son, he's the former head of psychiatry at Jackson Memorial Hospital. That's our largest public hospital. He had a late onset of schizophrenia and disappeared and became homeless. So I went into the court and I called this case. He ended up having a full-blown psychotic episode, saying that the people in court, which were his real parents, were really from the CIA and they'd come to kill him. And I ordered a full battery of evaluations to determine his competency, which I didn't really know what was going to happen at the end of that, but I thought at least it would help him get treatment. And after spending thousands of dollars on these evaluations and having this guy spend, 10, 12 weeks in jail on possession of a dairy cart, I had to release him back to the street because it turned out that because he was only on a misdemeanor, I had no authority to order him into any kind of treatment. And I released a floridly psychotic man who had been determined by the doctors to be dangerous to himself or others. And it really just opened a window to everything that was wrong with our system. And system is being generous. We don't have a system. And what we learned is that we do not treat these illnesses as illnesses. And if we're going to fix this, we should be treating these just like we do cancer or heart disease or diabetes. We would never put someone with diabetes or cancer in the back of a police car in handcuffs to go get them treatment. And what we've learned through the 20 years that we've done this is that if you do this right, not only will you significantly reduce your recidivism rates, you will actually end up addressing some of the racial disparity issues because we've significantly reduced the number of people getting arrested in our system. You will significantly reduce the number of police shootings because it turned out that our law enforcement officers, just like law enforcement officers around the country, suffer from severe PTSD, and we've been able to help them get treated as well. And you'll be able to help people get into lives of recovery again, which should be the ultimate goal. But you're also going to improve our public safety and save public dollars. And so this is a win-win-win, and I am very honored to be part of this project. I have an amazing staff that toils in ways to make this happen that it's just stunning to me every day. But I'm also optimistic because I believe that this project can and should be scaled around the country. Just this last year, the Conference of Chief Justices, along with the Conference of State Court Administrators, have created a task force on this issue. And they are looking on ways that they can replicate this project throughout the entire country. And so with that, I would like to first introduce Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, both two South Florida members of Congress who have been incredibly supportive of our efforts here. And I want to thank them for participating in today's event.
Good afternoon. I'm so glad you were able to join us today for the screening of Definition of Insanity and for the panel discussion to follow with Judge Stephen Leifman, Norm Ornstein, Rob Reiner, and Dr. Stephanie Lamell. This documentary will highlight important aspects of the United States criminal justice system and provide detailed insight into an effective approach for people with serious mental illnesses and substance use disorders. In the United States, 4% of the world's population has about 25% of the world's inmates housed in our jails and prisons, which costs about $1 trillion in direct and indirect costs. It is obvious we have a growing and unaddressed problem. And much of this is driven by a model that incarcerates instead of using evidence-based treatments for individuals that need access to mental health and substance abuse services. The statistics are alarming. On any given day, there are about 380,000 people with serious mental illnesses in jails and prisons, and another 574,000 are on probation or community control. People with mental illnesses in the United States are 10 times more likely to be incarcerated than hospitalized. They are 19 times more likely to find a bed in the criminal justice system than in a state civil hospital. To our great shame, because the United States lacks a cohesive behavioral health system, jails and prisons have become de facto treatment facilities for people dealing with mental illness. This must end. The documentary you'll see today highlights one of our country's most innovative approaches to improving our response to people with mental illness who come in contact with the criminal justice system, the Jail Diversion Program. I'm proud to say this is not just a Florida program, but is a model with the potential to inform and instruct how all of our communities can improve our response to mental illness. The Jail Diversion Program has helped significantly reduce the number of people with serious mental illness in jail. The Crisis Intervention Team, or CIT training for law enforcement officers, has also helped to address some of the racial disparities in our criminal justice system and has led to a precipitous drop in police shootings. In the 5 years before CIT training, the City of Miami Police had a total of 90 police shootings. Over the past 5 years, as more police have been trained and the culture of the department changed, the number of police shootings by the City of Miami Police Department has dropped to 16. As a result of significantly fewer police shootings, the City of Miami was able to improve its bond rating, saving taxpayers millions of dollars from fewer lawsuits and lower borrowing costs. As the film you are about to see illustrates, the Miami model works. It serves as a shining example of how comprehensive community-based treatment and support services can reduce inequality and lead to improved community safety. At the national level, we must support and incentivize these programs by passing bills like the Mental Health Justice Act, of which I am a proud original co-sponsor. This legislation would create a grant program to pay for hiring, training, salary, benefits, and additional expenses for mental health provider first responder units, like the one that has been so successful in Miami. As a member of Congress and a senior member of the Appropriations Committee, I will continue fighting for reforms that will decriminalize mental illness and fund programs that prioritize evidence-based care, not jails and prisons. I want to thank Judge Stephen Leifman for his leadership creating this program for our community and shining a light on this critical issue nationally.
I truly believe in the mission that Judge Leifman and his colleagues have spent their careers advocating for in South Florida. Initiatives like the Miami-Dade Diversion Program can and should be replicated throughout our state and throughout our nation. As a member of the Appropriations Committee, I have been active in securing key funding and language throughout multiple spending bills to help those who suffer with mental health issues. This includes programs that are crucial to reducing recidivism of individuals in our criminal justice system, again, who are suffering with mental illness. What you're going to see today will demonstrate clearly how our system can be transformed to respond to individuals who experience mental illness. Once again, thank you. Thank you, Judge Leifman, for your leadership, for your invaluable leadership on this very important issue.
And I'd like to thank both of those members of Congress for their commitment, which shows that there are at least a couple of issues where we might be able to find some broad-based bipartisan support, even if those issues are few and in between. A couple of things before we get to our discussion that relate to some of the questions that have been asked. I will say that having now seen this film many, many times, I still choke up at different points, including at the end when Judge Wolfson hugs Trevor Dolan. That's not what you normally find with judges and those who are in front of them with criminal charges. But it reflects some of the things that Steve has been able to do to transform this system, to create partnerships instead of adversarial relationships. We have already taken this film, not physically since COVID, but in other ways, to different places around the country. And frankly, I think we have an enormous opportunity here. It's a perfect storm where issues of criminal justice reform, mental health reform, and police reform have all come together. And there's a crying need and a desire in many places to have answers, and answers that can build some broad-based support. Some of you have asked where they can get access to the film and to the program today. Program today is being recorded, and before long we will have links, and I will and others will put them out on social media, and you'll be able to find them. But also the film itself and a lot of other interesting video outtakes in some cases are available at www.doifilm.com. DOI for definition of insanity. That includes the longer version, the theatrical version of the movie, which is about 75 minutes and provides some additional nuance. Judge Leifman, I'm going to come back to you with some larger questions about where you're going now and where we may be going in the future. Let me start, though, by asking Dr. Lamell. We know that when people with a mental illness are encountered by a police officer, often with calls that come from their families or from neighbors, that they escalate conflict. That's what they're trained to do. We know it often ends in tragedy, but we also know that if you are a person of color with a serious mental illness, that the likelihood that something bad is going to happen is magnified. And the same is true with the way people are treated in the criminal justice system more broadly. Reflect a little bit on those issues. And then I'd also like to ask you, since I know you have been deeply involved in questions of homelessness, about the intersection of all of this with the problems of the homeless.
Thank you, Norman and Judge Leifman, for inviting me to speak with everyone today. You know, I think these are two issues that have overlap, right? So one is the disproportionate overrepresentation of people of color in the criminal justice system, separate from the mental health system, and then an overrepresentation of people with serious mental illness in the criminal justice system. And where they overlap is sort of the population that we're talking about, that are even at higher risk of ending up being harmed by police in the process of trying to get help, being arrested and brought into the criminal justice system. And then once in the criminal justice system, getting caught in the criminal justice system for longer periods of time, and to have even more exposure to trauma, both because of their mental illness and also just because of the general treatment that people often get and people of color get in the criminal justice system. So there are two different social issues that are colliding at once, which puts people of color who have mental illness at a much higher risk of being abused, of increased trauma, and of frankly being killed in the process of trying to seek care. I do think that there are ways to improve this. And I think there are things that we can do. Obviously, social justice in general is something that we have to address. But I think in particular, thinking about mental health care. And when we're talking about mental health care, we have to also include substance abuse care, because I think often the folks that end up in the criminal justice system have been arrested for substance abuse charges. And people of color are often arrested for substance abuse charges at a much higher rate than non-minorities. And so we have to think about substance abuse in the same way that we think about mental illness, and require treatment for people as opposed to criminalizing them. So how do we do this? How do we shift? Because what we saw today in the documentary was sort of the end stage for a lot of people. Once they've ended up in the criminal justice system, and Dr. Leifman's, Judge Leifman's, he is doctor, Judge Leifman's program is a model program for helping people as they're coming out of the criminal justice system and coming back into the community. But I'd like to think about what we can do even before that. And really talking about preventive measures that we can do in the community. And it's a matter of prevention, early intervention, and then really good treatment, good evidence-based treatment around issues of mental health and substance abuse. And I think, as you were asking, Norm, one of the things we have to do is thinking about how do we not get the police involved unless we really need the police involved. And if we can get our treatment programs to really focus on prevention, early intervention, and treatment, we can prevent a lot of people from ending up needing these 911 calls to begin with by giving them a better level of care. And a part of the problem, I think, is the way we fund behavioral health care. That our behavioral health care systems, it's sort of funded as a one size fits all. But clearly when we're talking about people with serious mental illness and substance abuse and complex needs, they need a higher level of care than the average behavioral health system can provide. And they need specialty care, and they need care provided by clinicians who are trained in different ways to handle these higher levels of needs. But we don't fund our systems of care that way. So we have these little small specialty programs that pop up all over the place. And the Dade County program is one of these tremendous specialty programs. But how do we bring that to a higher level? How do we replicate that nationally? How do we provide that level of care, that higher level of specialized care in other parts of the United States? And I think that that's something that we really need to focus on, because one size doesn't fit all. And the people that fall through the cracks are the people with complex needs. And unfortunately, when we call 911 for these folks, the police are involved, things can escalate, and people end up in the criminal justice system when what they really need is the proper level of behavioral health care in the community.
That's terrific, thanks. And I should emphasize that one of the great innovations of Judge Leifman's program is to train 911 responders to know when the call involves just this kind of complexity and which team to send. And of course, one of the things we want to do is to make sure that the teams aren't just police officers down the road. That's something else we'll need to deal with. I'm going to come back to you, Stephanie, because I want to ask you a little bit more about anosognosia and what we do to deal with people with serious mental illness who have no insight and who are not given any opportunities to deal with those problems. But before we do that, I want to turn to my friend Rob Reiner. I want to add something to his introduction that I didn't mention. This is not just a remarkably talented person in the world of entertainment, but he has done more for early childhood education and care in the state of California than anybody else by spearheading what was a revolutionary move in a referendum using money from the tobacco industry, which he has also fought against for a long time. So Rob has a lot of credentials. Rob, I want to ask you a few things, and I'd like you to respond to whatever else you want to as well. When you struggled with your son when he was a young person with the addiction problem that led to homelessness and the unwillingness to get treatment for a long time, what brought you to do a movie about it? What made you think that that was a good direction in which to go? A little bit about the power of film, because that's what we saw when we decided to spearhead this documentary, and that it's not just airing a movie, but it's then using it to go elsewhere in programs like this and around the country. And then I'd also like to ask you about homelessness in California. Judy and I just made our first post-vaccination trip out to LA to visit our son, Danny. And I was struck as we drove around the city that it reminded me more of Bombay when we were there 30 years ago, with people in tents all across the city than it did of what we would expect from a modern American city.
Yeah, well, there's a lot there. First, I'd like to just say that you have the right people. I mean, because when I thought about these problems with mental health and with homelessness and drug addiction and child abuse and all of these things, they're kind of integrated, and it's very hard to separate them out. And in order to tackle the problem, you have to look at points of entry and say, what is the best way in to get the best possible outcomes? And my thought was, and again, it takes a, the old cliche, it takes a village. My thought was that if you could intervene early on, because mental health issues can be identified very early on, even in the first years of a child's life. And if you had the right kind of home visit programs, intervention programs, you could stem the tide of a population that enters into society with, a whole host of issues. But the way in which you're talking about it, I mean, I love that, you know, to have an enlightened judge like Steve Leifman is just, you know, a rarity. I mean, it's like a unicorn. I mean, I'm assuming that there are others that are pursuing this and helping out, but because you do need these different points of entry early on, the teenage years. We try to provide preschool and early health care and child care and home visit programs and aftercare programs. And there are certain models around the country. There are very few, but there's certain models that take this kind of organic, integrated approach. You hear these words all the time, integrated, comprehensive, you know, they're thrown around a lot of times by people in, you know, in public service. But the truth is you do need that kind of system of operating in order to get the outcomes that you need. You can't, I used to give this, you know, because I went all over the country talking about this. And I got attorneys generals involved. I got police involved. I got a lot of different people involved. And I used to give this, this analogy of, you see these babies going downstream and they're heading towards a waterfall and they're going over the waterfall, these little babies. And you see somebody before they go over the waterfall trying to grab a baby, and the baby are flying over the waterfall. And then somebody comes along and he sees this and he says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm trying to stop this. There are so many babies." And he runs in the other direction upstream. He says, "What are you going to do?" And he says, "I want to find out who's putting these babies in the water." And so the idea was that if we could get it at the source, we could eliminate some of that. But since we don't have that kind of investment, we do need this comprehensive approach where we approach it early on. We approach it with a mental health system that can deal with people with these issues. And then in the criminal justice system, to identify that these are not criminals of their own making. They are criminals because, or they are deemed criminal because they have mental health issues. So those are the things that I think about. And the reason I did a film was because, you know, it's one of the best ways to reach people, you know, just to put something out there that they can see. My son, you know, Michelle and I, our son, we've been struggling with him since his early days, since the time he's a baby. And we knew something was a little different about him. And when he got into his teenage years, he started self-medicating, like many of them do, not knowing what the problem was. And I would say that, you know, drug abuse and mental illness are hand in hand, because there's nobody that takes drugs if you feel good. If you feel good, you're not throwing a lot of drugs into you. But if you're not feeling good and you don't feel right with yourself, you're trying to do anything to make yourself feel better. And then you're down the road. Now, the serious mental health issues of schizophrenia and those kind of bipolar disorders, the schizophrenia happens in the late teens and early 20s, and you see psychotic breaks. Then it becomes kind of obvious that you've got somebody dealing with a mental health issue.
But we also had
And we had police come to the doors. We had everything you can possibly imagine. He went to rehab programs. We took him to the Yale Child Study Center. We did everything possible, and still it holds on. When he was normal, conscious, and relatively drug-free, we made the film, and it was at the time cathartic. But he, as you know, as Stephanie knows, is a lapse back. There's a lot of relapsing going on. And then in his 20s, mid-20s actually, he had that psychotic break that Norm talks about with his son. And then you're dealing with something that's serious, that it's very hard to get a hold of. And anosognosia, which you're going to talk about, which is the the mental
Lack of insight,
patient
yeah.
with mental illness has a lack of awareness that they have anything wrong with them, and they don't want to take the medication. They don't want to be treated. That it gets very difficult. So what has to happen is you have to start early on, and it's not simple. This is not simple. And people like Stephanie and therapists and doctors all over the country are been weighing nature versus nurture, and what is the nature part of it, what is the nurture part of it, and those things have to be wrestled with. But I thank God that there's people like Steve, because that's the last place to grab somebody before they go over the waterfall, and we need to have that as well. So I mean, I threw a lot out there, but I've been doing this for quite a while, and I headed up this commission in California for 7 years, and that's all I did for 7 years, and so I got to see a lot of this. There are programs for women in prison who give birth in prison, and they learn that you don't separate that child from that mother, and you learn so that that child is not going to be, because abuse fosters abuse, drug abuse or child abuse, they continue. So you have to find ways of breaking the cycle. And like I say, there are many entry points, and we have to focus on all of them. But this one is, I love to see that there's a judge who's actually thinking about this. Steve, I just, I can't believe there's somebody like you who was recognizing this. And how many judges around the country, I'm asking you, how many judges around the country, not just in Miami-Dade, or in Florida, but all over the country, think the way you do?
I think we're seeing a major increase. Judges are becoming a lot more enlightened about the issue, because when you're sitting there, you are the one that's making the decision to release people back to the street. And vast majority of people with mental illnesses, and the way 90%, they're not committing violent crimes. They're going to go back. And you know that you're going to be releasing somebody back to the street in a terrible situation. And so I think my colleagues have really come around on this issue. And we have, Stephanie and I work on an initiative called the Judges Psychiatric Leadership Initiative. And we have 4,000 judges and psychiatrists now linked together working on these issues. So I think you're going to see a lot more of it. And with the Supreme Court initiative, it's going to really improve.
Yeah, well, I spent some time with, at the time, Eric Holder was the Attorney General, and I spent time with him trying to develop programs through the AGs around the country, and also to law enforcement. I mean, it's unfair for law enforcement to be sent to a crime scene or a family upheaval, and to be therapists or to be mental health experts. They're not trained to do that, but they may be trained to recognize something. They can't obviously, dispense mental health help, but they can identify it, and maybe then, instead of dragging right to the criminal justice system, they're putting them in a mental health system. But you have to build that mental health system for it to be there. Otherwise, there's no other place for them to go.
Steve, to follow up on one of the things that Rob said, you started this program with misdemeanors and then moved to nonviolent felonies. What proportion of those involve drugs? In other words, how much do we see this interrelationship with those who have a mental illness who are self-medicating?
It's almost all. It's 90%, 85, 90% are what we call co-occurring, meaning they have both a serious mental illness and substance use disorder. But I also wanted to follow up on the other point that Rob made, which was so critical, and it's moving upstream. We know, for instance, that 92% of all the women in jail and prisons in the United States with serious mental illnesses have these horrific histories of trauma. And about 75% of men in jails and prisons with serious mental illnesses also have these horrific histories of trauma. And for women, it's usually sexual abuse as little girls. And so what happens is trauma, and I get to speak as the doctor since you called me once. Trauma is a physiological reaction. It's not an emotional reaction. It basically, and this is a very basic explanation, it's an overdose of cortisol of the brain, and it can break the brain. And a young brain that's exposed to so much cortisol is damaged more than an adult brain. And so there is this assessment tool called ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experience. And we know that if you have a score of 4 or above, there is 100% chance that that individual is going to end up with a substance use disorder and or a mental health disorder. And so what we should be doing, and they're trying to do it in California right now, is we should be offering that assessment to every middle school kid in America, identifying the issue now and getting them access to treatment, and stop allowing them to grow up into our criminal system because we didn't get them the access to care that they needed.
And that's the prevention part of what I was talking about, that, and as Rob was saying, you have to start early, and we have to screen. Now, I wouldn't even wait for middle school or high school, that we have to screen in the elementary schools and in the pre-K programs, and really look for the trauma. And Norm, you had asked me about housing, and I sort of left that out, but if I could go back to that for a moment.
Please.
I think it's not just about treatment and giving people pills, I think, as Steve had said in the documentary. It's really about understanding who the person is, and the trauma that they've experienced, and the other social determinants of health that they have to deal with. Housing is one of them. Having unstable housing, being homeless, is a huge risk factor for substance abuse exacerbation, mental illness exacerbation, and trauma. And it's not just housing. It's about having a decent education. It's about being able to find a job. It's about not living below the poverty line. I mean, for people with serious mental illness in our country, when they go on disability, by definition, they're living below the poverty line for the rest of their lives, unless they can come off a disability. And living below the poverty line puts you at risk for all sorts of other problems, nutritional problems. And when you're talking about people who are marginally housed or who are homeless, we always say this to our psychiatrists in our fellowship program, like, how do we expect people to be adherent with treatment and take their medications if they don't even have a clean glass of water, if they're living on the street? They don't have a change of clothes, they can't take a shower, but we expect them to show up in a clinic once a month to get medications and get treatments. It's not reasonable to expect people to do that if they have no stable place to live. And then when we get to the question of insight, which you had also asked about, anosognosia, or lack of insight, I think that for a lot of people, it's episodic. These are chronic illnesses that have periods of time when people are doing better, there are periods of time when people do worse, and their insight around having a diagnosis or an illness that requires treatment may be very limited or may not exist at all. But they're still people, and they're people who have needs and desires and goals around other aspects of their life, like maybe going back to school or getting their parents off their back, if the parents are trying to force them into treatment, or they want to have a relationship. There's some goal that people want, even when they have mental illness and substance abuse. And part of our job as clinicians is to address those issues and engage people around those issues, because once we've got a trusting relationship with someone and engaged with them, then we can talk about the actual treatment side of things. And there are times when we have to treat people against their will. We try to minimize that as much as possible. And we really try to take a recovery-oriented approach to thinking about treatment. And engagement has to come first. And in New York, we've had a real emphasis on recovery-oriented teams. We have these intensive mobile treatment teams, and we just recently got new funding to increase the number of intensive mobile treatment teams. They're like assertive community treatment teams, but they're actually funded slightly differently, so they actually have more flexibility than our ACT teams. And they really try to help people by joining with them where they're at and finding out what's motivating them to want to take better care of themselves. Because people do want to take better care of themselves. Nobody wants to be homeless. No one wants to be addicted to drugs. Nobody wants to have a mental illness. And so helping people to find goals and then work with them around trying to attain those goals. And in the process of doing that, getting them engaged in treatment. That's the way that we can get around the lack of insight that people often have about illness. Because we're not going to call it illness. We're going to treat it as though it's illness, but we're not going to call it that. We're going to engage with people around their lives and their goals.
I want to mention a couple of positive developments that I see out there. One related very much to what you just said, Stephanie. In the Rescue Act, we have direct payments going to families for their children Right now, it's only going to be for 6 months, but it's going to cut child poverty in half. And if we continue that, if we provide a floor for people, that will make a big difference. And of course, we're going to face the additional challenge now, fighting upstream with the additional mental illness and the trauma that the COVID has presented to us. So we've got that. The other is that next week, we're going to see a bill introduced by Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland and Karen Bass, a representative from California, that will provide all kinds of incentives for communities to have mental health professionals and social workers go on these calls where there are crisis situations with people with mental illness. An argument being that police are being asked to do too much. And if we can do this in a fashion that isn't just antagonistic towards police, but tries to build partnerships while making the situation better, we may help. We've had a couple of questions, including about whether this is the same as drug courts and simply mental health courts. And I'd like you to address that, Judge Leifman, while pointing out that the beauty of your program, as much as anything, is the understanding that it's a comprehensive approach. It's not just going in front of a court. It's providing the housing, it's providing the support, it's carrying out through the course of a year. It's finding all of these partnerships. So, but talk a little bit about the question of whether this isn't just the same as what we see in other places that have mental health or drug courts.
Thank you for the question. It's very different. The actual court part of what we do is almost the least of what we do. The problem with most mental health and drug courts is that they only take about 0.1% of the people that need the services. And often they may cherry pick and take the individuals that are the lowest risk. And the data and research show us that those low risk people don't need court supervision. In fact, by supervising them too much, they may end up more in jail than they would have had they not been in the program at all. And, you know, part of what we're trying to do nationally is teach prosecutors and DAs to learn to take the higher risk people because they're all getting out anyway. And if they're going to get out, make sure that they're leaving with treatment so that they don't reoffend. And so this is a much more comprehensive approach. This is both pre and post arrest, and there's several programs within our program. We have an assisted outpatient treatment program that we put together. We have an alternative competency restoration program. We have 8 peers that work for the court. 4 of them are graduates of our program, Justin, who you met in the video. We have a team of about 25 people that actually run this system for the entire county. And we take all misdemeanors, and we take, you know, all nonviolent felonies. So these programs need to be scaled up, not just a small percentage. And I just wanted to follow up, Norm, something you said, and I am optimistic on some of the things that are happening, but I also am a little nervous. I think it's wonderful that we have all this great new federal dollars coming into mental health and substance use, but I don't want to see those great new federal dollars spent on the same system that's incredibly ineffective.
Yeah.
Right.
And it is. We don't have a system of care. A lot of communities don't have any crisis care. One of the projects that Dr. Lamell and I worked on for the last almost 5 years was developing an ideal crisis system. Every community has a totally ridiculously different system of care. You know, you need to think about it like, God forbid you had a heart attack in Arizona, Alaska, or, you know, Hawaii, you're gonna have the same healthcare system to address it. It's not that way for mental health. So just throwing these great new dollars into that ineffective, not system of care isn't going to help. And we need to work with the insurance industry also to get them to do their fair share because they're pushing a lot of individuals into the public system that's already overburdened and under-resourced. And so this project put on by the Group for the Advancement of Psychiatry is an amazing report that for the first time lays out what an ideal system should even look like. And that's where money should be going, is to build those kinds of systems of care.
And Steve, if I could just add to that, you know, our report is focusing on crisis care. And just, you know, sort of the quick lay of the land is that right now, if you call 911, you either are brought to an emergency room or you're brought to the criminal justice system. And if you go to an emergency room, you're going to be evaluated and either get admitted or be discharged. And that's very limited. And sometimes people need other levels of crisis intervention that address some of those social needs that I was talking about. So someone might need a housing application. Someone may have gotten into a fight with their roommate or a family member and they're out on the street and there needs to be a family intervention. Sometimes people run out of their medications and the only way that they can get a refill is to go to an emergency room. So the crisis systems that we're talking about developing is a spectrum of care, starting from just having someone to talk to, which could be a peer or a social worker who can just sort of sit down and talk with someone, all the way up to having someone actually take a respite and stay for a few days and have, you know, several things put in place for them before they leave. But they don't need the level of an emergency room, and they don't need an inpatient hospitalization, which costs a heck of a lot more than a crisis system of care.
And we don't even talk about this enough. Most of this population, not when they are in crisis, not only have a psychiatric crisis issue, they have huge primary health issues.
Right.
The main reason they get admitted is because their blood pressure is so high, they're worried about a stroke, or they've smoked so much they have cancer, or diabetes. And so by not addressing these issues early on, it is so expensive with very poor outcomes. And the other part of the problem is, if you have pieces, the essential elements of recovery, they are so fragmented in a community that even if you didn't have the mental illness, you couldn't access it. And that's why we're building this one-stop shop in Miami, and it'll do exactly everything Dr. Lamell just talked about. If you just want to go hang out and you're a high utilizer and you just want to relax and talk to someone, that'll be there. If you need crisis care, it'll be there. If you need short-term residential, it'll be there. If you need primary health, dental health, eye clinic health, it will be there, all in one location. 200 beds of housing so that you can stay there and recover. And instead of just kicking people to the curb once we've adjudicated their criminal case, but not address their mental health or primary health needs, this will be a slow integration back into the community with all the resources they need to maintain the recovery that we've helped them get to. And that's the kind of thinking that has to go on, is just start thinking about it like other illnesses and not crimes. You know, we didn't say this, but we need to reiterate it. People with mental illnesses are no more dangerous than the general population. Tragically, they are much more likely to be victims of violent crimes by a far, far percentage than perpetrators of violent crimes. And recovery rates can be very good if we start early and get them what they need. And we just don't do that. We wait and wait for them to get sick, to die, to get horribly ill. And we just don't have to do it. And we know, because we've been doing this for 20 years, if we do it differently, you get much better outcomes.
I want to follow on by just noting that that's absolutely correct. In the very small number of cases where you have somebody with a serious mental illness who's involved in a horrific crime, it's because they're untreated. And they are untreated because the system's broken at all levels. But a part of it is that you will not get treatment unless, as you know, the standard, which is an imminent danger to yourself or others in most places, which means you almost literally have to have a gun to your head or a knife to somebody's throat, means that the warning signs are simply ignored until it's too late. Judge Leifman and my wife, who you met earlier, Judy Harris, are part of a working group trying to look at that standard and change it in some fashion, while also noting that if somebody doesn't have an insight into their own illness and is over 18, to leave them to their own devices means that you're leaving them free to freeze on the streets as homeless people, or to have terrible encounters with police and end up in solitary confinement, which will only make it worse. So we've got to look at this at so many different levels. But what Judge Leifman's program shows is that you don't have to throw money at this program, at this problem or set of problems, especially if you're just going to put it into the same failed system. You can save money at the same time. We're going to take our film around the country whenever we can physically travel. For those of you out there who have an interest in bringing something like this, the documentary with a discussion to try and spread best practices, let us know. We're going to be limited in what we can do, but we're certainly going to try to make this work more broadly. And obviously, we've got problems with the criminal justice system, the police system, and the mental health system, all interrelated. And I think the beauty of a lot of this is that as we look at the movement to reform police, and we're not just looking at encounters with people who have a serious mental illness. We've seen the body cam footage and other footage too often of people who are brutalized or killed, even if they don't have any sign of a mental illness, far more often than not people of color. But if you can change the culture of the police, then you save lives across the board. They change the way in which they deal with these things. Rob, I want to come back to you for something that I mentioned that I just like to get your view on. The shocking level of homelessness in Los Angeles, and so much of it we know is because of the failure of the mental health system, but it's broader than that. Is there anything being done about that? California should be a place where they ought to be more enlightened rather than less.
No, and it's so tragic because my wife was involved in trying to create housing for homeless vets. I mean, we started with veterans. These are people that serve the country, and we had thousands, tens of thousands of homeless vets on the streets. And if you go into the VA near on the west side, you'll see, like you say, Tent City, right outside the gates of the VA, and and there's an enormous amount of acreage. There's hundreds of acres there, and you'd think, well, why can't we build something? But you have two problems. One is the mental health issues and anosognosia, as you point out. A lot of them don't want to. They don't trust. They're paranoid. They don't want to be helped. But there are ones that do. And so we have to deal with the ones that really do want the help and start focusing on it. I dealt with the guy who was running the VA, and the red tape is just astounding. I mean, to try to, work your way through it. And lately I've heard here in Los Angeles, they're thinking about taking all those people on the west side, or in those tents, and then their solution is, well, then put them at the beach. I mean, what is that? How does that help? Yeah, we all want to go to the beach, but not that way, So it's a real problem. And I think a lot of it has to do with, yes, mental illness and the tremendous divide in the haves and the have-nots. We're living in a, like you say, it's Calcutta. I mean, you think you're in some, third world country, but living next door to people who have millions and millions of dollars. So it's pretty horrible. And I don't know that anybody has a solution to it except to do the things that you're doing, which is to treat people, to give them an opportunity, to give them an alternative if they want it. And that means mental health facilities. It means housing, as Stephanie pointed out, we need to start focusing on that because it's just going to get worse. It's just going to get worse.
In all fairness, though, I think we do have to make the distinction between what the behavioral health field, the mental health field can do and not do. And housing is a problem in this country because of social justice issues. And I don't know that clearly we're talking about people who have, substance abuse and mental health needs who are homeless, and they're a subpopulation of the homeless population in the United States. And I think that we have to realistically address social justice when we're talking about issues of poverty, when we're talking about issues of housing, when we're talking about some of these other social rights that we would hope that people in the United States would have that they don't have. And it's compounded for people who have mental illness and substance abuse. But I don't think that the mental health system is the answer to that. I think it's about how we spend our money and what we prioritize. And putting people out on taking people in tents and moving them out to the beach just makes no sense to me whatsoever. But taking that money and building low-income housing and then wrapping support services around it, or as Judge Leifman is doing, for folks who have serious mental illness, who need a higher level of need, taking our money and really investing in programs that actually can support the whole person and not just the mental health aspect of it is the way we should be thinking about spending some of these federal dollars that are coming. And it's not just the behavioral health system or mental health system alone. It really is a social justice approach to the inequities in our country that I think we have to address as well.
But don't you believe that it's intertwined though, isn't it?
Absolutely intertwined. Absolutely.
We even before the project that we run here, Miami-Dade was the only county in the United States that had a dedicated tax for homelessness. We have a penny sales tax on restaurants that make more than $400,000. And with those dollars, we were able to reduce our homeless population from about 8,000 to 1,000. And the 1,000 that are left are primarily this very acutely ill population. We've eliminated economic homelessness and veteran homelessness. But what we have left is mostly the substance use and mental health population. And that's why this building is so important. It's kind of the next logical step to do this. And there are strategies. It's just that there's so many silos in the system and nobody wants to give up any of their money. And I think one of the reasons we were as successful as we were is because I'm a judge and I was able to bring people to the table and, you know, they had to show up. Right. And, you know, we embarrassed them almost to giving up a little bit to get a little bit. And it worked so well that we've saved real savings, because when you close a jail, it's 12 million bucks a year for us.
But you mentioned, I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, I'm finished.
No, I was just going to say, you mentioned the silos and how this funding comes down these silos and nobody wants to give up anything. And you hear those words, comprehensive and integrated, but you guys are actually doing it. And that to me is what is the model, is to find ways of taking the criminal justice system, the mental health system, and integrating them in a comprehensive way, which involves not just mental health treatment, but also physical housing and all of that. And that's the way it needs to be approached. And so lawmakers and need to be thinking about it in terms of that comprehensive integrated approach. Otherwise, you're just throwing money down the drain.
And the irony is, with technology, it's not that hard to do anymore. So we have something called the HMIS system. It's the Homeless Management Information System. We're hooked into that. So we are able to like figure out where beds are and how we move people to a bed. And it's not just about low-income housing. You don't want to, you know, in my opinion, you want to do mixed housing so that you don't build slums, and you want to uplift the entire neighborhood. And so businesses move in. So there's a project in New York called Navy Green. It is gorgeous. And you have a multi-million-dollar townhouse next to a supportive housing project, next to an affordable housing project, next to a low-income house. And everyone shares a green.
Right.
It's magnificent, and businesses moved in, the property values went up, no crime. And that's the new thinking that we have to do. And the thinking's there, but the policies and the laws aren't really there, and the funding to make that kind of thinking work.
And I think it has to be on, instead of these siloed funding mechanisms, having bundled funding mechanisms that allow you to create these sort of unique environments. I mean, I think New York is ahead of the game in a lot of the creative ways that housing, low-income housing, has been incorporated into sort of middle-income housing and mixed-use housing, which really has benefited people with serious mental illness, and also affected folks who have other complex needs beyond mental illness, but you know, trauma, victims of domestic violence, the veterans, I mean, a whole group of people who actually need that kind of support.
So we're at close to the end of our time. There's so much more that we could talk about. I wanted Steve to reflect a little bit on his assisted outpatient treatment program, where he's taken these people who are homeless and deeply schizophrenic and managed in some instances, partly because of the advent of long-term injectable medications, which are very, very helpful to turning some lives around there and creating some insight, at least for some of those. We can talk more about the strategies that we could use to try and bring about this kind of integration. The difficulty that exists politically with, you know, in Los Angeles, we have a lot of homeless who are living by Silver Lake in a park and all the liberal people who live there don't want them around anymore and are trying to boot them out. There are difficult political issues that cut across the spectrum when it comes to providing some of these solutions, but it's also requiring transformational figures like Judge Leifman, actors who are passionate about this, like Dr. Lamell and Rob Reiner, and all of us to try and change the psyche of political figures and actors who actually make some of these decisions, including those in the medical healthcare system and the hospitals and the insurance companies, to look at different ways of approaching this and bring it around. We may have an opportunity here, partly because we do have a lot of money flowing out from the federal government in the aftermath of COVID. And we have an administration that may have at least some figures who are going to think about this in a different way, although we're going to have to fight to make that happen. But it's going to have to be done in hand-to-hand combat, city to city, community to community, much less here in Washington. The Addiction Policy Forum has been at the forefront of a lot of these battles, and they deserve kudos, not just for helping us put on this panel, but for all the work that they do. Columbia University is really the center of the way psychiatry is grappling with a lot of these issues. And Stephanie, thank you for the leadership that you've provided. We've gotten a number of questions asking where they can get more information or how they can access the possibility of bringing a program to them. And you can go to the Addiction Policy Forum. You can go to the website that we mentioned earlier with the film, doifilm.com. You can go to the website for our foundation, which is Ornstein, MORNSTEIN.org, and communicate with us as we try and take this battle and debate forward. And let's hope that we make this crisis something that really is an opportunity to bring about profound change, that we can use the money that might be available to be able not just to save those lives, but ultimately as an investment so that the society operates much better, and ultimately, as Judge Leifman has shown, so that we can save money along the way. I want to thank our panelists for all that they do and for joining with us today. And I would also like to thank the many hundreds of people who have tuned in and stayed with us. And this will not be the last you hear from us. Thank you all.